Sealing the deal, Bangladesh and Myanmar reach an agreement for the repatriation of hundreds of thousands of Muslim Rohingya. Will it finally solve a decades-long problem? And after a campaign of ethnic cleansing, what's left for people to return to? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zaidan. For nearly 3 months now, hundreds of thousands of Muslim Rohingya have been fleeing Myanmar. They're escaping a military crackdown in Rakhine State. The UN calls ethnic cleansing. More than 600,000 have been living in makeshift camps in neighbouring Bangladesh. Now the governments of the two countries have signed a deal to send the refugees back to Myanmar. It's a decision human rights groups are calling unthinkable. They say refugees should not be sent back if their safety can't be guaranteed. There have been extensive reports of abuse, rape, torture and killings in Rakhine State. The military says it's combating Rohingya fighters, but the operation has been condemned around the world. The government of Aung San Suu Kyi strongly denies the accusations of abuse. Well, the agreement is expected to begin 2 months from now in late January. It's based on an earlier accord between the two countries which allows refugees to return home after proving their residency in Myanmar. Officials say 300 potential refugees will be processed daily. At that rate, the verification process could take up to 20 years to repatriate all the refugees. And Pope Francis is expected to arrive in Myanmar on Monday. He'll likely address the Rohingya crisis when he meets the leader Aung San Suu Kyi and the head of the army. International pressure has been building on Myanmar. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who recently met Aung San Suu Kyi, said the atrocities being committed by the military amounted to ethnic cleansing. The United Nations and human rights groups have used similar language.
They will have to take it seriously, because this is the most powerful country in the world saying this, and these are strong words. Well, there was even a feeling after Mr. Tillerson left that, well, he's been fobbed off, well, he's just going home and he's been charmed by the lady and all that, but he came back strong. Something of a surprise.
Let's bring our guests into the show. We have in Barcelona Tun Kin, president of the Burmese Rohingya organisation UK. In Oxford, Ben Phillips, humanitarian officer for Oxfam. And joining us via Skype from Penang in Malaysia, Gwen Robinson, chief editor of Nikkei Asia Review. Welcome to the show. If I could start with Tun. So, does this deal between Myanmar and Bangladesh solve the Rohingya problem?
I don't think so at all. This is just, I think from Burmese side, they are trying to show international community to that where they committed genocide against Rohingya, they want to ace international pressure. So
but they're saying, Tun, that they're now finally willing to take Rohingya back to Myanmar.
Yes, but I think it's very premature. How can these people can return back to their native land where still Rohingya houses are burning down and many Rohingyas are fleeing? As far as what I received, even some videos I received last 12 hours ago, Rakhine mob burned down Rohingya houses in Butidang, cooperation of Burmese military. And humanitarian aid is not allowed already, allowed many places still. So people are still dying. How can these people can come back where they live as an open prison, where they have no rights? And, this is a place where the government created impossible situation where UN and United States mentioned happened to ethnic cleansing against Rohingya population. How these people can come back? This is the question here,
OK, let's bring Ben into the discussion. And Tun is raising some questions which have been raised by humanitarian organisations. I'll come to that in a minute, if I may, Ben. But if we could take a step back and ask this question, is it clear in what capacity Myanmar will accept the return of the Rohingyas? As far as I know, they haven't said that they recognise them now as citizens. What are they coming back as? Is that at all clear from this deal?
I think what we've seen is the challenge is that Many people that I spoke to when I was in the camps in Bangladesh, many of them did not want to go back due to the ordeals that they had gone through, the violence that they had witnessed, or the violence that was against them themselves. So it's very important that any sort of process to which people return to Myanmar, that they are given the choice and do so voluntarily, because, as I said, when I spoke to people in the camps, they were very clear that they were very afraid of returning.
All right, Gwen, from what we've understood from reading the statements, for example, of the Secretary of Labour of Myanmar, he's quoted as saying they've been sending registration forms to Bangladesh. I take it from that there is some kind of process that the Rohingya refugees will be required to prove that they came from Myanmar.
Basically, yes, but as has been pointed out, we have absolutely no clear idea of what has exactly been agreed. You know, we were just told, and the news is everywhere today, that the foreign ministers of Myanmar and Bangladesh signed an agreement. We have no idea what the substance of that agreement is. It's not clear what the level of proof required will be. I mean, it has been stated, and it's been repeated quite a few times by Myanmar government officials that they will be required to prove identity. On the other hand, there's also been mixed signals about, you know, possible sort of relaxation of earlier conditions on previous return agreements. So there is an acknowledgement that a lot of these people have fled with absolutely nothing. I mean, maybe the clothes they're wearing. So there is some acknowledgement that this is going to be a very tough thing to do. But going back to Ben's point, I would say there is a lot of fear in those camps in the Bangladesh border region. But also, I think many refugees have told aid workers when interviewed that they would go back with some sort of guarantee that they could go back to the lives they had before, in other words, their land. And this has been made very clear that, you know, that is not an option from the Myanmar government's point of view. So I think there's many issues, and as the first speaker made clear as well, there are still people leaving. So it does seem rather hasty and half-baked, but the pressure is mounting hugely. So I guess the whole thing is being rushed through, and it leaves us with very little knowledge of the detail.
Tun, is there any process you're aware of as part of this deal to ensure the safety of people who do return to Myanmar?
As far as, you know, what we know is it's nothing clear. Still, you know, we have not seen any details of this agreement. So as a Rohingya, we all are quite worried what will happen, what will do next to these refugees, because, you know, the thing is, this is a kind of their Burmese government to take away the attention from international community, to divert the attention. That is what we have to look here. You know, where's almost...
But do people want to... Forgive me for interrupting, Anton, but Ben just said a moment ago from perhaps his contacts with people in aid camps in Bangladesh, it doesn't seem like people want to go back. Is that the sentiment you get when you talk to members of your organisation? Do Rohingyas want to return to Myanmar?
Yeah, when I was in Bangladesh, they told me because their lives are at risk, that's why they fled from the country. The way, horrific situation, the brutality, what Burmese military did, that is, they're facing trauma in the camps, you know. So the other thing is the government, the Burmese military destroyed everything, you know, their houses, their crops, and they taken away whatever they have. So the thing is, first thing, whether they will provide safety and security. Secondly, whether they will recognize as a citizen the Rohingya people. Thirdly, whether they can go back their original place. And on top of that, whether the rights what Rohingya have, they will get or not. This is a question here, because they told me if we can get back our rights. Of course, we want to go back to our place where we belong to. But the thing is, it's quite hard to see from Burmese side, where they are arguing and they are denying all the atrocities, crime against Rohingya. That's what I can see.
All right, let me take the point then, I should say, to Gwen, the statement there which Tun made, that people want to return back to their places. Now, the reports that we've all been hearing are things like homes have been burnt down, villages have been razed. I mean, do people even have homes to return to?
Well, as I mentioned, and as Tun also said, in fact, no, they've been destroyed. But I think the more important point is that the military leaders have said, and also government officials have implied, that these lands are no longer, it's not an option for any refugee to return to where they were living. There has been rezoning taking place. I've done quite a few interviews in recent months with officials who have confirmed that those lands that Rohingya lived on and farmed are being redistributed. A new map of northern Rakhine is being drawn up. And already, I think government officials have made clear that there will be a kind of, they're calling them model villages. I'd like to see what kind of model, but I think, really they're kind of in camps, and that they will be in areas that are nothing like what I think these people were, where they were living before they fled. So I think that is a real problem. And the other problem on this issue of fear and perhaps this overwhelming fear that people feel about any prospect of going back where they suffered such trauma, and nearly all of them have suffered some kind of trauma, is that this is no longer a military operation. There are still people leaving. You can't see full-on military operations taking place there now. It is vigilantes or even individuals, extremist Buddhists, groups of youths. We've seen it. BBC did some excellent reporting and actually caught on video some youth burning villages. These are not people in uniform. Therefore, I think that is an extra concern that I think is even beyond the government's, capacity to guarantee, because these are individual citizens, civilians.
To your first point about rezoning and reassignment of land, Ben, when you work with people in refugee camps, I'm wondering how aware they are of what's been happening back home to their lands and properties with all this reassignment of land and rezoning in Rakhine State. Is anyone communicating that to them? Do they have any clue? Anyone explain to them what they might be returning to?
I think it's very clear from when I was speaking to people in Bangladesh that maybe some of their family members would have gone first, fleeing to Bangladesh, and therefore later on some of other relatives or family members would arrive in Bangladesh as well and sort of inform their families of the situation. So there is an awareness of how it is, and that's why.
But what I mean, Ben, is anybody, if there is a process now to return people, are any officials explaining to some of the Rohingyas in refugee camps in Bangladesh what they might be returning to? They may know that, there's been a bit of rezoning going on in Rakhine State. Has anyone told them if they sign up and say, yes, I'll go home, where is home now that they're going back to?
And I think this is what would need to be done, because I don't think it's happening at the moment, and it's therefore important that actors like the UN, UNHCR are involved in the process, so there is clear understanding about what people will get when they return. Will they have freedom of movement in Myanmar? Will they have opportunities for jobs? And will they actually be able to go back to their homes? Because it's very critical that people return, that they feel safe, and they also do so with dignity and choice and not forced to return to their country.
Gwen, on the other hand, there's a voice that says, is this a serious deal at all? There have been other deals over the last few decades to return Rohingya refugees. They haven't been implemented. This one, even by the current schedule, 300 a day, could take up to 20 years to implement.
In fact, when we interviewed the minister in charge, Win Myat, of the repatriation process, in fact, he actually said 100 to 150 a day, which should, as you say, take about 20 years, even if you, really, realistically, no one, I think, thinks that 800,000 or actually the actual figure of Rohingya refugees now residing in Bangladesh is actually over 1 million if you take in the previous waves and the attacks, about 100,000 who fled after the last October attacks. So we're looking at a lot of people.
So is this just a PR stunt, Gwen?
Well, PR stunt is one is one phrase that was used by some of the more cynical critics. I think really actually it's more a knee-jerk response to intense international pressure, absolutely intense fear on the Myanmar government side of sanctions and the ratcheting up of the pressure in the last couple of days with the US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, coming out, actually reversing an earlier position where he refused to call it ethnic cleansing. He made it very clear that the position has toughened considerably. So I think there's real fear in Naypyidaw that they really have to be seen to be doing something. So what was driving these talks, the real motivation, I think, was to really look and appear as though there was an agreement in place, so that the cart has been put before the horse in this case. And it does depend what the details are. But you said that previous agreements hadn't been fully implemented. You're right. There have been half-baked implementations, but in fact, quite a lot have come back. There were about 200,000 or more moved back in one of the earlier waves. So that did take place, and of course, you've seen what happened. There was festering resentments, which all boiled over again. So it really does look like a bit of a hopeless situation. But that doesn't mean that both sides can't try. They must try, I mean, for obvious reasons.
And on that point, Tun, what is the alternative if we play devil's advocate? If they're not, even if conditions aren't perfect in Myanmar, are they to sit in refugee camps indefinitely in Bangladesh, where conditions are not perfect there either, are they?
Yeah, I think we need to look at here. The point is, returning refugees is not the solution. We need to look at the solution. These people belong to Burma. Rohingyas are indigenous people of Burma. So they must get their rights in Burma. So to get their rights, we need international action. Here, UN, United States mentioned already what's happening to Rohingyas in ethnic cleansing. So we must put a stronger pressure to ASEAN, Bangladesh, and also Burma together, that particularly to Burma, what is the point is they must give the Rohingya citizenship first and provide safety and security. And, the thing is, we have to look at 1978, 1992, these people came back not as a citizen of Burma. So this is a cycle of exodus going on. So we cannot repeat again. So this thing is, we, international community, have to call another UN Security Council meeting, and we need urgent security and safety needed. So UN peacekeeping force or other mechanism need to provide for Rohingya people in Rakhine State for the safety, and also safe zone should be created, and UN should be observers there. And same time, we must call this refer to Burmese military criminal online to ICC. That is also important because it's repeating again and again. We can't go on more. International community is not doing enough at all. So the thing is, that's why Burmese government can go, that's to ease the pressure. This is a kind of MOU signing. There will not be happen anything as far as what I can see from the situation, Rakhine State, what I can see the refugees who have told me while I was in Bangladesh, The thing is, it's a kind of deadlock situation they try to do, but it will not be happen practically. So this is not about return of refugees, it's a solution. Solution is
a broader political solution to people who are currently stateless. Okay, I get that point. Now, I wonder, Ben, from your perspective, as in, you work for an aid agency, and obviously you're not here to say this deal is good or bad, but I wonder if this deal doesn't include some kind of political settlement that finally gives these people citizenship. From your perspective as an aid agency, would you be thinking that this is the end of the problem, time to disband the camps, or will you be saying, let's keep those camps open, this could be just another cycle?
I mean, as you've already mentioned, that even if a process does happen, people will be in Bangladesh for quite some time. The average refugee camp globally now ranges between 10 and 20 years. So you always have to imagine that people are going to be there for quite some time, and whoever does go back, as already mentioned, it's important that they have their rights. They have their rights to be able to work, be able to own a home and also have freedom of movement. So it's very important that not only do people have access to all these services, but also humanitarian organisations and other aid agencies are able to work in northern Rakhine and be able to help people that are in these areas.
Gwen, we're talking about a lot of practical, and rightly so, practical needs, but I wonder whether the issue of rhetoric is being addressed. I mean, Monk Ottama, who's a prominent figure in the nationalist circle, which promotes a sort of anti-Muslim rhetoric, was quoted only today as saying, quote, "Our ideas have won over the vast majority of the population," end quote. Can there really be a solution? Can Rohingyas ever hope to live in peace in Myanmar before that sort of Buddhist radical rhetoric is addressed seriously by the government that says this is no longer on?
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think that question is about a similar, and, you know, it's like asking, can there be a lasting peace in the Middle East? I mean, many people believe it's an insoluble issue. And certainly a lot of people will, I mean, there's a lot of voices on both sides criticising what's going on in Myanmar, obviously, but actually very few have come up with any workable solution. So, you know, the reason is because it does seem fairly intractable. It's happened, as we pointed out, time and time again. And I don't think the world still really realises how deep-seated the aversion, even hatred amongst a lot of the population, Burmese Buddhist population in Myanmar is towards the Rohingya. And it's just something that I think it's a certain kind of almost brainwashing. People are brought up. I mean, I'm shocked that, you know, very reasonable, rational, intelligent Burmese can, you know, can harbour these kind of very, very strong feelings. So, you know, if you look at it like that, it looks a bit hopeless. I'm just hoping that there's enough incentive for Myanmar to actually make something work. As there has been in the past, there were these attempts and half-successful efforts before. And in that respect, I'd say that, you know, threats and pressure from the international community, sanctions, whatever, are, you know, are actually resulting in some action. Let's just say, though, I think it's very important to point out that the reason for this extraordinary response by the military, very harsh beyond belief, it was triggered by attacks by Rohingya militants, which took place from last October and again in August. And that threat, although, you know, it seems to have gone quiet, could come back at any point. And that's a big fear, I think, inside Myanmar amongst people, that there could be another terrorist incident, even, you know, bombs carried out by a small number of people, because, frankly, it looks like a lot of the militants have been killed or, you know, have disappeared. It's very difficult for large bands to move now inside that region. But I think there's a very big risk that something else could happen and, again, trigger another ferocious military response.
A big risk that something else could happen. I think that's one point that most of us, if not all of us, can agree on until this one is resolved. We'll have to end the show there, though. Let's thank our guests, Tun Kin, Gwen Robinson and Ben Phillips. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the show again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, head over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami Zaidan, and the whole team here, for now, thanks for joining us.